Hey, good evening, everybody. How are y'all doing tonight? Sorry for starting here a few minutes late. Thomas and I were just getting situated here. Excited to be with you all here. My name is Michael Antosy. I am the Director of Practice Growth Consulting here with MyAdvice. Going to give you all just a few seconds just to join in here for this evening, and then we will kick it off and get started. Very excited to talk to you guys tonight, really just about, the roles that each of our companies play when you're really starting to get a new practice, you're starting up your practice, or even if you've been established and you're getting into that second location, how folks like Practice Transitions Group, as well as MyAdvice, can really help you with just navigating some of the business environment here. So let's dive in. Thomas Allen, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself here to our group here tonight, who you're with, and we can kind of go from there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michael. So I'm Thomas Allen. I am the founder and owner and CEO of both Practice Real Estate Group and Practice Transitions Group. So in Practice Real Estate Group, we help people looking to start their first or 100th practice find the best location and secure the best real estate terms for them. Um, and then on Practice Transitions Group, we advise business owners in selling their practices, uh, mainly to private equity, but we sell a lot of doctor-to-doctor practices as well.
Awesome. I can't tell you, I mean, how much I work with practices that are really just getting started or those that are mature. And it's great to know that the practice companies really has the capacity and the scalability to really see a practice or to be able to meet a practice really regardless of where they're at in the business transition cycle. So really excited to hear some of your knowledge here this evening as well too. For those of you who don't know myself, my name is Mike Antosy. I am the Director of Practice Growth Consulting here with MyAdvice. What we do is we really help practice owners to really drive new patient acquisition, to drive revenue through having a real strategically set and sound online marketing strategy for a practice. We've been around for over 20 years. We actually serve over 3,000 practices throughout the United States, really mainly in terms of fee for service, but our focus really is on getting patients to the door, getting the phone to ring. So obviously there's just a very natural synergy in terms of what Thomas does at the practice companies, as well as how marketing really plays a role in that. And tonight, what we're really going to do is really dive into the roles that each of us play and helping to really understand, this webinar tonight is really inherently driven around practice growth opportunities, right? Whether if it's getting that location, potentially selling up to private equity, and really how marketing can really fit into that as well too. So Tom, so I want to start here with you. And, some challenges, when we talk about, getting that location. First of all, I would love to understand is, from the practices that you serve, would you, on the location side, and let's kind of focus more on the real estate side, would you say that most of these practices are kind of new and just getting started and they need some help in terms of finding that location? Are they established and they're looking to add that secondary location? Help us to maybe understand a little bit more just in terms of the expertise that you really bring to the table from that side of things.
Absolutely happy to. So uh, we help many people who have never owned a practice. So let's just kind of back up. We'll probably complete around 180 real estate transactions this year on behalf of doctors all across the country. And there are many that come to us, hey, I'm working as an associate. I've seen how much money my boss is making, and or I think I can do this, that, and the other better. And I'm ready to have my own first deal. Where do I start? And they come to us and we walk them through obviously how our process works in finding the best locations for them to open a practice via demographic competition research, and then ultimately securing the real estate. On the other end of the spectrum, and it's part of the reason we're on this other end of the spectrum is because some of our clients started. We have one client in particular, or a few, but really one I'm thinking of right now. We met them when they had one location. Fast forward, they're at 60 locations now, and they've recapped with one
Wow.
of the biggest private equity firms in the country, one of the biggest, most known ones. We have another client who I think we met him. He might have had 4 or 5 when we met him, and now he's well over 100 and has recapped twice, and is now with arguably the most prolific private equity firm in the United States, and we're still helping them grow over 100 locations. And so
Wow.
uh, we've got 14 advisors, brokers across the country that know our methodology, have access to our tools and software, and work for our company that are helping all ends of that spectrum. And then we're helping many. Hey, I've got one location and my goal is to grow to 4. We're helping. Hey, I'm a smaller PE group and we want to go from 5 to 20. So we span the spectrum there.
One of the things, as I've gotten to know some of your team members as well too on the real estate side, one of the things that we always preach to our clients is just um, understanding the importance of data in making sound marketing decisions. And you'd be surprised at how many practices that we talk to that when we ask just some very simple metrics, like how many leads are you generating on a monthly basis? What's your cost per lead? What's your cost of acquisition? It's just practice owners really don't know that. And one of the things that I was really impressed by with your group is understanding and being able to um, help clients make decisions just in terms of where the best potential locations might be for them as a predicate of data. We'd love to hear just a little bit more about how your team is advising clients on that front.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting how you tie it back into the marketing data. As a business owner, we're obviously doing a lot of marketing on our own, and marketing costs money. Good marketing costs a lot of money, but it's worth the return. And we are constantly watching, what's our conversion rate and all that. And so you tie that back to starting up a practice, and the demographic data that is out there nowadays, because of technology and all the credit card data and everything, is amazing. And so when somebody comes to us, whether it's their first practice or 50th, it's like, all right, what kind of practice you want to open? And when I say what kind of practice, it's not necessarily, oh, I'm a derm, I'm a dentist, I'm a vet, I'm a ophthalmologist. Let's say a derm comes to us. It's like, well, are you going for more of the medical dermatology or the cosmetic dermatology? Well, I'm going for more of the cosmetics. So you're going to start focusing. You got to really go find the cream of the crop income levels to look at first. They say, well, I live in this spot and I'm willing to drive 30 minutes. So we start by going, all right, let's draw a 30-minute, drive time ring around your house. Let's go find the highest income areas. And then now let's map out all the competition. Let's map out every dermatologist. And we have tools and technology in a team that's able to map out all the competition. And not only that, you can click on it and it brings up how many Google reviews they have, a link to their website. You can look at how many providers they have. And so it's really diving into that data to go, where's a market where there's an actual need for whatever service I'm providing. So if you take a dentist, we're going to go look at areas. And let's say they want to, hey, I just kind of want to do bread and butter PPO, fee for service dentistry. You're not going to want to go incomes too high. You're not going to want to go incomes too low. But ultimately, what we believe is competition to population ratio is huge. So why not go into an area where you've got 5, 6, 7,000 people per doctor in a capture area, if that's available, or at least 3,500 people per competitor in a trade area. So really diving into that data to identify that area is the first step, and that's going to allow people like you, for your marketing to be even that much more impactful when you're not competing against, as many competitors in that trade area, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, one of the things that we've also even found, and I'm curious to know, once you have kind of done your initial spec and your analysis, how quickly that actually might even change, right? What we find is, and we find this actually, especially in the dental spaces as well, too, is that where, one of the, what I will tell is that marketing is a process, and there are layers to how you build a marketing strategy. And for those of you who are watching this, I did a great webinar with Lauren Wheeler also at the practice companies, who works with Thomas a few weeks ago. I'm sure we'll be sharing a link to it somewhere, focusing a little bit more on how practices prepare themselves on the sales side and when they're looking to really make that transaction. But a lot of practice owners, when they think about marketing, they think about like how to build a marketing plan. They think about SEO. They think about doing paid ads, and I got to get a whole AdWords campaign that's going. And don't get me wrong. I mean, those are things that can be very, very effective to do, but they're actually not the first things that you do. And what we find is that when practice owners start to do the very aggressive things, but they lack the foundation, it's not going to make the aggressive thing work as well. For those who are in aesthetics watching this, it would be like me coming in to say, hey, inject me with Botox, maybe look better, but I smoke and I drink and I party my face off all the time and I eat like crap and I don't exercise. But yet I want you to make me look better. I'm sure that people that are watching this are thinking, well, my name is, practitioner so-and-so. I'm not Jesus Christ. I'm not a miracle worker.
Right.
But getting back to how this really relates to a marketing strategy and as it relates to paid ads, what we've actually found is that, it could be a very fluid thing. You come in with expectations saying that, okay, I'm going to put X amount of dollars into my marketing campaign right now, today. Your competition down the road, though, just by tomorrow might be also making a decision. Well, just for whatever reason, I'm going to outspend that. I'm going to double my marketing budget. And so, what we found, especially in the digital space, is that it tends to be very fluid. And getting in front of problems and trying to almost kind of be the first market mover is always going to be the more advantageous position than having to feel like you're coming from behind. Do you find that when clients are looking at real estate or particular locations, do you find that their markets are moving as fast as that, or do you feel like there's a lot of kind of runway where they have some comfortable positions where they can look at a particular location and say, you know what, this is going to be a pretty good investment for me to be thinking about for the next X amount of years?
That's a great question. So obviously this real estate can't be fluid, right? You're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars just in build out alone, investing in the location to open up the practice. And the question we get a lot is basically what you're asking is, well, y'all do all this research on how many competitors there are in the area, but somebody could open up down the street and I'm not going to know about them. And the answer is, that's right. We are not going to pick them up in our initial search demographically, but let's say we show you an area and you go, hey, I want to open in that area. Well, the next step in our process is going to be to call every single building in that area that shows that they have space available and see if they have space for, let's say, aesthetics, if they have space for a med spa. If they, let's say the med spa wants 3,000 feet. Do you have 3,000 feet for a med spa? And we might get the answer, well, we actually just signed one. And so, no, we don't anymore. And so that's how we can get ahead and go, hey, doc, there is another med spa that's about to open in this area. And the way we found out was because we called every building. One reason we call every building, and present it to our clients if there's space available, even though we know it might not be the right project, is so that our clients can see, well, if I pay $25 a foot, I get this kind of space with this kind of visibility. But if I'm willing to pay $35 a foot, which on 3,000 feet is another $30,000 a year, that $10 square foot delta, I get this kind of visibility or this nice of a building. So they can see the entire market and understand what their options are. But also it allows us to uncover, is there another competitor that's going to open the market? And that's also going to be part of the report, right? Is we're going to say, hey, we called, these 12 buildings, these 6 have space available, these 6 didn't. Here's why: either it was too small, too big, or a competitor just signed a lease there. So that's the way to get ahead of if somebody's not open but is maybe in the process of building out or something. So as you can't prevent somebody from going and opening down the street, right? You might sign a lease or buy a building, and somebody else might not have done the same research you did, and they might just decide, oh, I like that space. I've been driving by it every day for the last 2 years or 2 months, or I've been seeing that project come out of the ground for the last 6 months. And I just went ahead and signed it, and they had no idea that you were opening up across the street. So you can't prevent against everything. But it goes
Right.
back to if you open up in an area where the ratios are good, from a population target population of your patient to the number of providers in the area, one new provider, you should be able to overcome that. But you can't prevent it entirely. Does that answer the
Yeah.
question?
No, I think that's a great answer. I think what we want to kind of come away with is that I think this kind of goes back to all things in life. It's like you make the best decisions off of the numbers that you have at the time that you have them, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that some of the challenges that I find with my new practices, and I don't know if maybe you find this as well too. If we're really talking about that practice, hey, I'm just getting started. What do I really need to be doing? Is that uh, I, in my opinion, I tend to see folks that take a little bit too long to make decisions to put them in positions to be successful.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's it's so funny. I actually met this doctor one time. To give you a little bit of backstory on myself, I live in Pennsylvania right now. I was living in LA though for the last 16 years. And I just turned 40. So I work a lot in with regenerative medicine and aesthetics practice doctors, and I've got two young boys. I'm thinking about um, some anti-aging modalities of things that I can get into, and one of the things that's been actually really interesting me is peptides. So anyway, I was trying to find, really specifically where I moved to outside of Philly is a men's health primary care provider that had some type of fee for service, either if it was going to be hormone therapy down the line, which I'm not ready for, or peptides. Like that's kind of something that was really of interest to me. And Thomas, I got to tell you, I could not find anybody in my area of Pennsylvania that was doing these things. I got so desperate. I went to Google. I shouldn't say my first thing was going to Google, doing my research, couldn't find anything. I got so desperate though that I actually went to like nextdoor.com and and was like, "Hey neighbors, I'm new. Like, help me find a practice that does this." And I couldn't find anybody. So I'll kind of cut to the end of the story here. I've been on peptides for a long time now, for about a year. But wouldn't you know, about 6 months after the fact, um, randomly I came across a practice um, within 5 miles of me, had two locations. Men's Health Primary Care has been established for a long time, offering all these services that I needed. And I couldn't find this.
You couldn't
So
find
I
them.
couldn't find them at all. They're invisible on Google.
Wow.
So so I was like, you know what? This is my space. This is what I do. I feel like I could really add a lot of value to helping this practice to grow because, here's the thing for folks that are watching this. If you're in aesthetics, if you're in regenerative, if you're in dentistry, the fact that you're opening up these locations, you are elective. That means that patients do not have to go to you. They don't have to go to this location that Thomas and his team are taking all this diligent effort of really putting the data together, helping you to understand where your best growth opportunities can be. It's all about the value that you're adding to that patient. And that's really where marketing does come into play. And when your value starts to exceed your cost, that's what helps with driving revenue. That's what helps to capitalize on the revenue potential that a particular location can be in your market. Anyway, going back to my story, so I actually had emailed this doctor, and I said to him, "Hey, listen, this is kind of what I do. I've been doing this now for over a decade. I was trying to find you." And Thomas, I actually sent him the screenshots that I put on Nextdoor to say, "Hey, this is me trying to find you. I couldn't find you." And he writes me back saying, "Hey, no, thank you. Our social media is fine."
That's insane.
And like, look, I think that these are some of the challenges. This is reflective of some of the challenges that our practice owners really go through, right? You've got all of this noise, you've got all of this, people that are really here to help, and they end up kind of just getting in their own way. Um, you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, just real estate aside, preparing a practice for an equity event aside, what are some of the challenges that you really feel like a lot of our practice owners are really going through right now? And what are some insights that you might have just in terms of how they could be better positioned to overcome some of those things?
Yeah, I think your story is a good one in this vein of him replying saying, no, our social media is just fine. You're right about the noise. Due to email and other things, there's a lot of business owners get solicited all day long by, you know, people. Maybe a lot of them are good and some of them are not so good. And so they've got to find, and we preach this early on when they're starting out, especially the people starting their first practice. And we know that it takes a while to gain trust. And we're saying, hey, trust us. You need to build a team around you that's going to help you be
Yes.
successful. And here are the people that we've worked with. You know, you need a lender. Here's a lender or two that is going to understand your business. They're not going to
Yep.
drag you around. We have relationships with them, and so if they drag you around, they're dragging us around, and they're not going to continue getting our referrals. Um, Here's a builder. Here's equipment. Here's marketing. You know, and finding somebody, a business owner, if they can find somebody that they can trust in this ecosystem to then hand them off to good people, um, is going to pay huge dividends for themselves. It's kind of like your story. You know, we could go give somebody the best location in town, but if their bedside manner is terrible, and you can drive all the patients in the world to them, but if their bedside manner is terrible, the patients aren't going to come back. They're not going to refer their friends. Um,
Yep.
or frankly, if they're not, you know, it's kind of a dirty word in healthcare, but they've got to be able to quote unquote sell a little bit too. Like you said, it's elective, and you're not selling in a bad way. You're helping the people make, just like we're saying, how can we help our business owners? How can you help the patients make good decisions for their own health? Even in an aesthetics practice, they might come in talking about, and I've heard some great talks on this, but they come in talking about Botox, but what they really want is their eyelids done, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so you could sell through education. And so I think if these docs can find one or two people that can earn and they trust, and somehow these people, whether it's us or somebody else, has earned their trust and they're good people, they can refer them to the right people to help grow their business and make it more successful. And as a business owner myself, I feel the same way. I mean, I get hit up all day long by people for, I mean, can you be on this webinar? Can you do this? Can you do that? And the ones that I trust and get good referrals to by other people I trust, it helps my business grow as well. Um, so that'd be my advice. No pun intended.
Well, thank you very much. That's why we actually, well, to that aspect of trust, that's kind of our name actually, our company name, MyAdvice, certainly has a lot of intention behind it. It's not us just, saying, hey, here's a piece of advice, like it's
Yeah,
going to the deli, getting a ticket, but it's like,
yeah,
it's serving as advisors, as strategic guides, and the my in that equation is actually our clients.
yeah,
It's our job to really serve as uh, telling our clients what to do. I one of the challenges that we find on the marketing side, and this is especially, once a practice has been opened, you have your location, is that oftentimes the relationship of a marketing company, it devolves in the sense of communication and partnership. I talk to practice owners all the time where they say, hey, things are great in the beginning. Y'all are great in the beginning, but after a few months, you get a few additional accounts, and then my account becomes less important because the new ones start to take over. It's so frustrating when I hear that, because um, that's really never the way things should be with marketing. What we have found, especially over the last 18 months with the onset of AI, and artificial intelligence and chat GPT, that there has been a significant amount of changes on how Google is promoting websites for our practices, the qualities that Google is looking at. I've actually done a whole 1 hour webinar on that as well too, that I can send, everyone's watching this a link to. But there have actually been 3 core updates to Google's platform over the last 18 months. And Thomas, you probably don't know this, but core updates to Google's algorithm happen less frequently. I would probably say maybe the cadence is maybe once every 2 to 3 years. There have been 3 core updates within the last 18 months, and a lot of this is about what Google is doing to respond to artificial intelligence and AI. A lot of this, and again, we don't have a lot of time to go into this now, but a lot of this has been around the idea of how you use content to drive your practice's digital marketing strategy and how you use content to drive your exposure. But it could be very easy for me to go to a chat GPT and say, hey, write me 10 questions and about common questions that patients ask about Botox, and I could slap that onto my website. As a matter of fact, my Alexa behind me is hearing me ask that question. Tells you how everyone is kind of in the know here. But so this has a point just in the fact that, you'd be amazed at how many times I talk to practice owners and their marketing companies are not even telling them about some of these AI updates that have happened within Google, how they can be better positioned to respond to this ever evolving environment. And so, you mentioned building your team, get your team of, finance practices, finance companies, building your team with who can help you select the best location, building your marketing team. We say this constantly to our practices as well too, is that you really have to start to build your stable of team members that have your success in the back of their mind. One of the things that we actually do is we incentivize all of our packages actually to be loss leaders for us at 12 months. So, when a company is aligned well with incentives, when, every person's paycheck is basically tied to the client sticking with that company, I guarantee that communication will never be an issue. And again, that's kind of going back to what you had mentioned with, doing the vetting, doing the trust building, and really kind of looking under the hood of the companies that you might be considering to work with. I would say, one of my common challenges that I see with practice owners is that they're just not taking the time to do enough of that diligence. They just kind of want to say, just do my marketing and, okay, cool. That's fine. You guys are good. Or, just help me with my real estate. Okay, fine. You're good. It really comes down to, I would say, a mindset, and looking at what you're starting to build is an entity. It's an investment into yourself. You're starting out this business. That's one of the things I loved about my conversation with Lauren a few weeks ago, is just really looking at the nuances of what private equity looks like when they're evaluating the success of a practice, especially as it relates to how they look at some of their marketing as well too. So guys, I would say it's really about doing your diligence. You stop seeing, yeah, I know we all want to take care of patients, but you're starting a business. You got to bring the right folks on your team to build that starting lineup, if you will, that are really going to help to drive all facets of this for you. That's, in my opinion, I would say probably one of the things that most of my practices don't do, is they're just not taking the time to do enough of that diligence.
Absolutely. I mean, our biggest competitor is not necessarily what people would think is our competitors. It's the real estate agent next door who might normally sell houses or might even do office leasing, but they have none of the tools we have or experience of what's important and how to acquire, how to find the best location, but B, also how to secure it and acquire it, and what's going to be important to the doctor short term and long term in that location. And that's why, you see the private equity backed groups or the groups with multiple locations, they're working with us because they value that, and they do their diligence on everything, as I'm sure from the marketing side. So yeah, I think if these docs, and I know they're so busy working all day with patients, but if they'll take their time to once again do the diligence and build the right team, it's going to pay off for sure.
What would you say? Why work with a group like a practice companies that are going to help with that real estate aspect, as opposed to like just a real estate, maybe something that just does commercial real estate broking?
Because as a doctor, well, first let's start back to the location analysis. It's like people that help, people. Excuse me for the coughing. I had pneumonia last week, and I'm still I have some lingering symptoms.
No
Um,
problem.
so if I take securing this office lease that we have here in Austin. What we were focused on was figuring out where's a central spot where our team's going to be happy to come and be, and then economically, how nice of a building do we actually need? Um, and it's not really going to drive revenue, right? But you come work with us as a doctor, and it's, hey, what area is going to have a need for your services, which we've already covered, but then B, let's talk about why you should maybe spend that extra $30,000 a year on location A versus location B. Because that $30,000, right? It depends on the type of doc, but let's just say it's an aesthetics practice. How many units of Botox is $30,000, or how many
Mm,
cool sculpting treatments is $30,000? Well, that might, depending on the type of treatment, that might only be 15 cases a year, right? That's just revenue though. Then you got to get
yep.
to the net, right? So if your margin's 20%, or if you're going to be an owner operator, your margin, your seller's discretionary earnings might be like more like 40, 50%, depending on what your income is. So if I go spend that extra, let's just say for easy math, it's 50% seller's discretionary earnings over time. I've got to go generate another $60,000 a year to cover that $30,000. Well, if I'm selling a bunch of high-end procedures, right? Lasers, um, cool sculpting, injections. What if that extra 30,000, because I'm on that corner with that visibility in that nicer building, in that nicer space with better parking next to better co-tenants that are national, where I know that shopping center is not going to go downhill, that might end up generating me $200,000 a year in revenue, right?
Yeah.
Um, so just that, and that those conversations are what our advisors are trained to have. And then on top of that, you, these doctors are investing once again. Build outs are now at 100, and depending on the type of doc you are and how nice you want to finish it out, $140 to $250 a square foot. So on 3,000 square feet, that's 400 to $750,000. You need different protections in that lease, and you need different things negotiated than if you're just some office tenant that might move in and out over 2, 3, 5 years. You got to go get a 10-year lease with 2 5-year renewal options, and you can use the landlord sometimes as a cheaper financing vehicle than even the bank, right? Well, I'll pay an extra $2 a square foot, which is an extra $6,000 a year, and that's 6,000. So we understand that $6,000 a year to the landlord can be worth an extra $100,000 on that property, right? And so uh, we might be able to go get you another 60, $70,000 of tenant improvement allowance for paying that extra $2 a square foot. So we understand your business. We understand
Yeah.
how you operate, how you work, how marketing is going to drive traffic to it, versus somebody that's just helping people lease office space for their, uh, whatever business, attorney office, CPA office, some tech company, whatever it might be.
No, I love that. It's being able to speak their language in terms of understanding what's they're offering. And what it sounds to me is that you're really looking at this from a future forecasting perspective. You're advising to say, like, again, at the end of the day, you're having this mindset of understanding this location is what's going to help to make or break this practice from their bottom line perspective. So how are we going to start to build that?
Yeah.
Um, and listen, I will tell you, where we generally come in is after a practice owner has settled in on that location, especially when they're, just getting going.
Right.
And so understanding what some of those case values would, what they're worth. If we're talking about, say, something like a cool sculpting versus systemic glutide versus, XYZ, what have you, what else? It's equating to, how is this location actually going to help to give me more of that volume that I need? And as a marketer, I can't tell you how awesome it is for us to work with a client that has an affirmative direction in terms of what they want to be selling more of, the types of patients they want to be converting more of. And so um, what it's sounding like really for me is that it really starts with folks at the practice companies, practice real estate group, what have you, that are going to help practice owners to really educate them on what that ROI, that revenue potential could be looking like from that location. At the end of the day, it's a location, 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 isn't it?
100%. And I'm using even an extreme example, right? It's not always going to be 30,000 between the two. Let's say it's 10,000. I mean, it's understanding their business. And it's the same way, there's a lot of providers now that are maybe allowed to, I'm going to go back to the aesthetics deal again, to provide Botox. Um, they would probably laugh at people that go to the dentist to get their Botox treatment done. Why would you go? It's the same thing as going and using a regular commercial real estate agent when you're able to use somebody that's specialized
Yes.
in your business. So, and you know, the other bad pitch I think commercial real estate agents make is that, oh, our services don't cost you anything. The landlord pays us. Well, it's built into those rent numbers. The landlords have built in commission payments into the rent numbers. I'm also using leasing only. Same with the purchase price. They've built commission dollars into that purchase price. And so it is coming out of the doctor's pocket. So why would not get the best representation that you possibly can to represent your interests in that negotiation, and somebody that also understands the process? I mean, we're able to go, hey, all right, doc, we've submitted an LOI. Let's go ahead and get somebody in there. If the landlord doesn't have a CAD file, to measure and make a CAD file, so you can kind of start messing with the design. Let's get certain contractors in there now to make sure there's no construction surprises. Let's go and start talking to your lender on where we think this rent's going to land, and have contractors start kind of giving some high level bids, because not every space is going to cost the same to build out depending on the condition it's in. So it's also understanding that process so that everything is just streamlined for you. Um, and not only is it streamlined for you, the biggest risk I think somebody has when opening their first practice or their 30th is surprises. Nobody likes surprises. And so since we understand the process so well, our clients are not going to have surprises after that lease is signed. We occasionally discover things further into negotiations than we'd like. Absolutely. But at that point, we have the opportunity to go to the landlord and say, hey, we've discovered this and it's going to cost us an extra $30,000 to build out. And so we want you to cover that. And they might say no. I'm not saying they're going to say yes every time, but at least you didn't discover that after you signed that lease or bought that building.
Sure. When you said this earlier today, and I'm curious to know, when you start to work with that startup practice, that first location, and then you hear something to the effect of like, well, this client has 30 locations. What does that evolution look like for that practice owner? I mean, do you feel like when you start to work with that client, do they come in with those lofty goals and those expectations, or do you feel like that's something they kind of evolve into their growth over time?
Most of the people that have 30 come in at least saying, hey, I'm going to have 5 or 7. And we have a lot of our agents, and I remember this back when I was working with a lot of startups. A lot of them are like, hey, I'm going to open 2 or 3 or 4. And that's another thing that we do. It's like, that's great. We would love to help you open 4, but you got to make sure that first one goes really well
Right.
before you can open that second. Right. But yes, most of the people that have, whether it's 5 or 30, they're a certain personality type that are, they're driven, and they're coming in hot, and they're typically quick decision makers, and they open that first one pretty quick and they drive it and get it to where it needs to be, and then they start looking for number 2. And most of them have friends or family or something that's already done it that they're seeing, and they're like, hey, if that person can, guy or girl can do it, I can do it. And they kind of watched how they did it. And they are the ones that also early on, they they hire a team around them and trust that team and delegate, but they also do the most diligence. Um, you know, our best clients around this company are some of the ones that were the hardest to sign up because they were interviewing us against other people because they were doing their diligence. But once they're ready to go, they're ready to go. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and then same on the practice sales side. Our best clients that we sell for, a lot of them, they have a really good practice and they're interviewing us with other people. The ones that I worry about as the business owner when we sign them up really fast is like, all right, are they just taking a flyer because they just signed our agreement without even reading it? You know,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
so it's an interesting position because we're completely at risk both on the real estate side and on the practice sales side. We only get paid assuming a transaction happens, and so you know and we're doing our homework as well, um, because our agent's time is valuable.
Yeah, well, I love that you have that model because you don't get paid until a transaction happens. You remove a lot of the risk from the client side, and you earn that opportunity to really be kind of a lifetime partner for that group over the course of many years. Because again, they're thinking about, okay, it's that first location. Now we're going to say five, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, and now hey, we're trying to sell into private equity. I mean, that what you're doing. Or to even another buyer. I mean, for what you're doing to be able to earn the opportunity to really extend that relationship, I think is really, really valuable. We do the same thing as well too with MyAdvice, is that we, again, we intentionally really drive our plans and strategies to be loss leaders for us, because we know that, listen, we're not trying to be, have a 1 year relationship with a client. It's really supposed to be a lifetime value partnership. And that's how I would say also too, one of the things that I find that uh, and I think that you probably can relate this from on the private equity side as well too, or the sales side, is that so many of our clients, or the clients that I talk to, they just see the world very transactionally. Especially when they relate it to marketing. They think about, how much did I spend on marketing on a given month? How many patients did that get me? What did those patients spend? And you multiply that to that revenue number. And that's oftentimes how you understand the relationship between what you've spent on marketing and how it's given you a good ROI. And that's a fine relationship. That's a fine way of being able to look at the world. But frankly, it's a very shallow perspective, because what yes, marketing does that. It drives those transactions, but its true value to your practice is about building more predictable revenue pipeline. What are the investment dollars that you're making into yourself now? They're paying you, say, 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line. In other words, it's really equating to what we call patient lifetime value. What is the value that one individual is worth to a practice over the course of many, many, many years? And we've actually have broken down LTV among various industries. If you're a med spa owner, like an average LTV over a 15-year life cycle is around $57,000. If you're a plastic surgeon, that LTV is anywhere from $80,000 to $110,000.
Wow.
Dentistry is around 30,000. So, our practices, they just don't look at the world that way. They don't look at, hey, the diligence that you've said in setting up a great location, that patient walks through that door and says, well, gosh, there's 80, if you're a plastic surgeon, there's $80,000 that just walked through that door.
Yeah.
Practice owners just don't really see the world in that way. And so I love the fact that you are really taking off a lot of that risk, because what that tells me is that you're focused really on the long-term gain in the relationship with your clients, as opposed to just trying to get them to that location and say, calling it good.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, none of our business is such a hard thing, but our business just seems to get easier and easier in terms of client acquisition every year because almost every one of our clients ends up referring at least one, if not multiple friends, because we do a really
Hmm.
good job. And so, yes, some of these deals are really hard, and maybe for whatever reason, the fee might be a little smaller on certain ones than others. But we look at every deal as if it's essentially at least two deals, because at some point that, lucky for, it's the blessing and the curse, right? Lucky for us, it's been a huge blessing, but this medical or dental markets, there, a lot of them are super tight. These doctors hang out together, they talk a lot, and so if you do a good job, they're just talking about how good of a job you did. And when their friends thinking about opening their first practice, or maybe their friend has four or five and has been using some random real estate agent and hears about us, which this happens a lot too, from a friend, then they call us. And all of a sudden we've got somebody now that has multiple locations ready to go do two or three more. But yeah, we look at every client like they're at least two transactions, even if we know they tell us on the front side, like, no, I just want to build my own one practice and have a nice life and live near my house, and or work near my house, but they're gonna refer a friend. And so we take the longevity very seriously. We are not fly by night. We've been building this thing brick by brick for over 10 years now, and
Love
we're
that.
not going anywhere.
Yeah. They definitely have built a great company for sure. The last question I have for you is, practice comes to you, they're trying to make a decision. Am I going to just open up my first location on my own, or am I going to potentially buy a location? How do you help to navigate that? What are some of the things that you think are important for
That's the most common
this?
most most common question. It depends on what kind of doctor they are, right? A lot of them, there's no reason to go buy something, because whatever they're buying, the patients aren't really sticky. There's not actually a bunch of goodwill in it. So like those are an easier talk. But let's take a dentist. That's a really easy example, because the
Mm,
dentist selling practice to other dentists have been around for 50 years. Um, Here's what's happened in the market. The really cream of the crop practices, and there's a lot of docs, they're like, hey, I never thought I would sell to private equity, but the money's just too good, I have to sell to them. I wish I could sell to another dentist. Like, a lot of the cream of the crop practices are going to private equity, period, end of story. So now you're kind of playing in the lower, they're not actually bad practices, but you're playing kind of the lesser revenue practices, with lesser earnings. And a lot of these young docs want to earn more, so they've got to go find something. And then the good ones out of that are good in a lot of markets, in major markets. The major cities are going to have multiple offers on it. They're going to be fighting to buy this practice, so they're probably ultimately going to quote unquote overpay. Um, Look, the bank will still finance 100% of it. You're not necessarily overpaying. It's not like something's actually going to go bad, but going, you're going to really need and be under pressure to go improve that practice quickly, in order for you to
hmm
take home the kind of money you want to take home. So if you can find something, I tell a lot of people, like, and if you read online about buying versus starting just a general business, everybody says go buy a business, don't start one up from scratch, because you're buying cash flow day one. Um, but you need to look at, all right, if I go buy this, what is this doctor doing, not doing, that I can come in and improve to really raise revenues? But then you also got to look at, what am I missing here? What's this doctor doing that I'm going to miss on, and uh, how many of these patients are going to leave, or how much is this revenue going to go down? Is the staff actually going to accept me? Right? They might underestimate the front desk person, and how many people love that front desk person. And you might be the best buyer in the world and be ready to treat that front desk person the best way they can be treated, and they still
Yeah.
might leave 2 weeks after you buy it. So, and then rarely are you going to find a practice to buy where you love the equipment and the layout and the design. So it's just knowing, if you're going to go buy, that you're going to have challenges, and it's not just going to be this. A lot of people have this perception that it's going to be this just easy cash flow day one, and if I go
Mm.
start, I'm going to have a second job in order to make money while I build this practice up. um, and it's not going to be an easy day one buy. um, and so, also, for on that note, if one day you think about selling it, sure, you can go. Let's just say you're going to go buy $1 million revenue dental practice. you're probably going to pay somewhere between 800,000 and $1 million for that thing. And then that equipment's going to be at least 10 years old, if not older. So there's going to be more capital investment back in over time. So maybe that practice really ends up costing you $1 million, 4 million, 5 for that $1 million in revenue. We've had many startup dental clients do $1 million in their first, second, third year. You can go spend $500,000, $600,000, have all kinds of brand new equipment, brand new space in a great location with great visibility, and have that same revenue 2.5 years later. So
Yeah.
that's ultimately a better deal, right?
Right.
So when people come to us on the way we've trained our real estate agents, when people call, well, I'm thinking about buying, thinking about starting up, is they kind of having that conversation with them of like, here's kind of the pros and cons. And why don't you go explore the market and see if there's something you want to buy for a few months, and then come back to us and tell us, what you found. And a lot of times when they find something that they like and they buy it, that's better. Once again, it goes back to, we got to protect our time too. So we're not going to go, oh, no, don't go buy something. It's a terrible idea. You got to go start, because ultimately, most of our startup clients on the dental side probably started out looking at buying something before they came to us to decide to start up. I mean, it's just the truth, because they hear this. They are taught in dental school and by all these people that it's, instant cash flow. And that's just not entirely true.
As you're telling me this story, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about Biggie Smalls right now. No money, no problems.
Right.
Uh,
It's true. No, it's true. And
and,
I want to preface that with, there's been many successful practices bought too. There are going to be great opportunities out there, but you just got to, you can't look at this as a 5-year investment. This is, sure, things happen. You might decide to move cities and sell it in 5 or 6 years. This is ultimately a 10 to 40-year investment.
right. Yeah, when you say that, it's almost kind of like, I talk to like a lot of my aesthetics practice owners, and they oftentimes will say to me that, you know what, I would rather hire somebody that is, this is their first aesthetics job. They've not done this before, because I can train them the way that I want to train them, and I can kind of build those processes in the way that I know that they should be built, as opposed to maybe having somebody that's come in and sure they've been doing it for a little bit, but they kind of bring a lot of these bad habits into the equation. So yeah, I think with anything in life, it's kind of, you have to kind of measure what's going to make the most sense for you, obviously. But I appreciate that insight though, because I think that again, it's uh, you know, it can be very easy to be swayed by the cash flow that's coming in without understanding kind of what those long-term cost repercussions are obviously like. It's almost kind of like if you buy an old home and know you have to remodel it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, look, I know that we're almost here at our time. Thomas, I really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate, some of your insight that you shared here. And it's pretty clear to me that there's just a lot of great synergies between, what your team is doing on the practice companies, practice transitions group, practice real estate group, as well as how MyAdvice also helps with some of our practices as well, too. Want to just share this with the group here before we part here for this evening. Wanted to just present some ways of really just being able to kind of stay in touch. And pardon me here, let me kind of open up this slide deck here. So, if you are in a position where, hey, I'm opening up my practice, trying to determine again whether I buy an existing, start my own, whatever that might be. If you look at the lower half of this screen here, I encourage you to get in touch with Thomas as well as his team. You can request a consultation if you just take out your phone, scan that QR code that will link, I think, directly to an appointment request link that your team can follow up with. If you're not ready for that, but if you're at least thinking about some of what the future can look like, either on the buying side or on the selling side, staying in touch with the practice companies. On the right-hand side, you're going to see a link to their Instagram that you can stay in touch. And the same here for myself here as well, too, with MyAdvice in the top here. If you are, again, if your practice is really struggling with marketing, if you're just beginning, maybe you haven't thought about a marketing budget, you're kind of green. The idea of seeing marketing as a cost versus an investment is somewhat new to you. Or frankly, if your practice is established and you're spending a lot, but you're not seeing that good ROI come back in. Again, I would encourage you to take out your phone, scan a consultation call here with me. It's a complimentary call where we're going to do a deep dive in terms of understanding really the deficiencies and the layers of your marketing strategy and how we might be able to help you. Again, if you're not really ready for that, just to stay in touch, you can follow me on Instagram. I encourage you to do that. I'll probably actually be posting some snippets from this webinar this evening here as well too. And Thomas, you haven't asked me to do this, but I'm just going to put this out here as well too. For those of you all who might be in the DFW area, Practice Transitions is going to be hosting a great event this coming Thursday, June 27th, in Plano, Texas. What is private equity's interest in aesthetics? Again, gal that I have a lot of respect for, Lauren Wheeler. She will be hosting this event from what I understand. If you need any additional information on this, again, you can go back to scan the QR code that you're seeing here on the bottom left to get in touch with the practice companies. Lastly, just wrap this up. I will also be attending the aesthetic show this coming weekend at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas. So for those of you who are in aesthetics, please stop by our booth. Would love to be able to connect here with you guys as well too. So Thomas, is anyone from your team going to be there by chance?
I don't believe so, but I can't believe there's another aesthetic show at the Wynn so quick. That sounds like fun.
They're all popping up, man. You know what? I will never turn down a conference to go back to the Wynn Hotel in Vegas.
Yeah, I was going to say the Wynn Hotel in Vegas is pretty tough to beat.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to beat. So anyway, hey, Thomas, thank you again for your time this evening. Appreciate that. Again, my name is Michael Antosy with MyAdvice. Thank you all for spending your evening here with us. A recording will also be going out for this as well too. And look forward to hopefully meeting you all soon. Take care.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Thomas. Bye-bye.